I can remember distinctively having that conversation with my last boss. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Runway to Success. As always, I am with our Director of Recruitment, Mikaela. How's it going, Mikaela?
Hey, it's going great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I'm working off a bum leg. I had a minor accident, so I've got a one leg down, but I'm pushing through it. We're having a good week and excited to be here today. So I'm sitting a little lower with a leg up to compensate for this minor injury. What's new? I mean, the last time we left off, I'm pretty sure that you were going to be soloing around the world, doing something like that with your flying. Like, what's new?
Wow. All right. So a lot happens in one weekend of flying. I feel pretty proud to say that we did power on, power off stalls, my instructor and I, and lived to tell the tale. It seems pretty wild to me to be purposefully doing that, but the intention behind it is so critical to long-term success. And it was terrifying in the moment. I'm not going to lie. You're holding on, hoping that the instructor really knows what they're doing, but I'm in great hands. My instructor I couldn't be a bigger fan of, and can't wait to see him and his career continue to grow as he's pursuing becoming a professional pilot. So it was a great weekend. What about you? What'd you do?
Gosh, a little flying myself. I think that, some power off stalls. We did some turning around points, some S turns, some more slow flight. I was super close to landing the plane, really, really close, but I still have some work to do there. So luckily the instructor jumped in and took over at the last minute, but we're getting there. But there's something that you said a moment ago that kind of struck me when it comes to the parallels of really anything in life where you're learning something new and careers. And you mentioned, being challenged. You mentioned some of the, kind of stepping outside of your comfort zone. And I feel like today, especially when you're looking at opportunities for growth, right? And opportunities in roles that maybe you have been doing some of the responsibilities, maybe you're looking for that next stretch role. There's some parallels between the two. And so I'm curious for you, as you've been having conversations with candidates today, reflecting on some of your own personal growth that you're going through, what are some of the parallels that you're seeing both on the professional side with the candidates that are going through this kind of same evolution, but more on the business side of things?
So to make sure I'm following your question, you're right. Number one, that the journey of pursuing my PPL, the challenge that I'm facing, it does mirror challenges that you face in your career professionally, right? When you're transitioning to new roles, it feels unknown. It can feel a little scary. You're wondering if you have the equipment that you need to be able to safely make it back to ground, right? Theoretically speaking. And when I am speaking with some of these candidates, I think about one in particular, I guess two. I've had a couple of conversations with people transitioning out of the military in the next 12 months. That is such a huge transition. And in speaking with one, honestly, I was getting a little frustrated. I'm not going to lie. My alter ego was starting to come out with how there are
Is that
a lot
Frankie?
of...
Was Frankie coming out?
Frankie is my alter ego. For those of you watching, you'll get to know her in the coming weeks and months. But I was genuinely feeling frustrated for this candidate because, one, civilian professional careers and how you navigate that is so different from the way that you grow in rank within the military. And this candidate was sharing with me the vast amount of recruiters that have reached out, professional resume writers, all trying to charge this candidate to rewrite his resume and to help this candidate, navigate the job market, and then being ghosted by all of these people, and then had a situation where received an offer, thought that they had the job secured, get to the new town, and the job's been moved to a different location. And
Wow.
It's frustrating for me because, number one, when I parallel it to my own journey of learning how to be a private pilot, right? The transition from military to civilian life is big. It's a lot bigger than a lot of organizations and individuals think, and it requires somebody who's really willing to be your partner in that process and to help navigate and negotiate and coach you through that process. I can assure you that had I been working with this individual many months ago, there's no way in the world I would have let them move, given the circumstances that they explained to me, that they chose to move under, because it just didn't seem like a real deal, if that makes sense. They thought it was real. They were told, oh, you're good, this is great, but it wasn't. And so this person's uncomfortable because they're leaving what they've known for 20 plus years, right? And they're trying to embark on a career in civilian life, and then they're being misguided by people, and that was just really frustrating to experience. And so Frankie got a little feisty this week, not with the candidate, of course, but just with the realities of why recruiting and talent consultants can get a bad rep is like exactly that. So I'm hoping I can turn it around for this candidate and bring something positive forward.
Well, there's no question that I'm sure you'll do all that you can to assist this candidate in their next journey or in their next steps. But for somebody who's maybe going through this exact same transition or maybe near this transition, right? They've been career military, and for many, what's really great is that especially if they entered the military at a certain stage of their lives, they've got their first career they're wrapping up, but then there are so many years for career number two to kick off, right? And so taking these learnings and taking this experience and just your own, I won't date you too much, your decades or so of experience.
Just a couple.
What advice would you give to other military professionals that are entering the civilian world of some things to watch out for that would maybe help someone else avoid some of the traps that this candidate unfortunately had to fall into?
One is there are really great resources that the military, they've invested long-standing relationships with some organizations, and I would say start there as a really great place to start learning how to advocate for yourself in a different environment and learning how to position yourself in a different environment. Then I do believe finding a partner outside of those organizations can be highly valuable, and one who specializes in a space, like with us with aviation. That person can help you navigate the job market and understand the value that you bring in today's market standards. And then the other piece, and this is the most simple piece, is do not pack a single box until you have a signed contract or offer letter, both from you and from the organization, because handshakes and you're good mans, they only get you so far.
Yeah, it's tough to pay rent or mortgage with your good man, right? You want a little bit more security, and so that's a really good example, especially for those that are transitioning. But what about the workers today that may have already made that transition? Maybe they don't have a military background and they've got a experience like in business aviation, for example, right? I know that you've been working both with candidates and businesses to make matches within a lot of different sectors of business aviation. Talk to me a little bit about one of the recent examples of maybe a candidate that you've worked with, maybe a client that you've worked with, and some of the wins, the watch outs, and the key learnings for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority, I would say, of people that I work with are not transitioning from the military. But when I get to work with people transitioning from the military, I get fired up because of the service that they've given our country. I'm working with quite a few individuals right now who are making transitions in their career for a variety of reasons. And, one, I'll speak to one in particular, is really coming from a place of values alignment. Sometimes when you enter an organization, it's the right chapter for right then, but you might grow out of alignment with that organization, and that's perfectly fine. And so we're working together to make sure that we can find an opportunity that fits their professional goals and feels aligned with their personal values too. And so that's really interesting to work through, because what you and I value could be very different from what this individual values in an organization. And determining culture alignment is tough. Sometimes people want to, we always say move with a sense of urgency, but there is a balance to that urgency to make sure that people aren't pulling a fast one on you and you're really uncovering what the true day-to-day environment is like in an organization.
Yeah, Patty McCord talks about this. She's the former, chief human resources officer for Netflix, and she was, I can't remember the exact number she was in terms of employee headcount for Netflix, but she was, I think, in the double digits. She was early on, but she has an incredible book, and I'm spacing on the name. If you can remember the name right now, please share.
Powerful.
Yes, Powerful. Thank you. But she kind of talks talks about that specifically in her book around, sometimes it's on both sides of the spectrum, right? A candidate may outgrow an organization, and also sometimes an organization outgrows the candidate. And it's super important for both the candidate and the organization to recognize the different stages of growth that they may be going through. And so for a candidate, you may find yourself that early on you join, a startup company or organization. And as you continue to grow, there may only be so much growth opportunity there for you. And you may need to leave and go to a much bigger, operation to take on more responsibility, manage more people, achieve some of your goals. But the reverse happens too, right? As organizations grow and they scale, the needs and demands of those employees scales and grows as well. And somebody who may have been an incredible and is an incredible team member, the role that they're in when you're a 35 employee organization, when you reach 75 to 100 employees, that responsibility, it may not be the right fit for them anymore, right? And so it's kind of a balance. And so from an employer's perspective, how would you say employers today can manage that? Like, how do you go about working with an individual who has helped you achieve your success? They've grown with you, but they may have just reached kind of a ceiling of their, whether it's ability, desire of their own, ambitions, or a combination of the two.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it is a two-way street, kind of like you're discussing. And if you guys haven't read that book, Powerful, highly recommend it. When it comes to the employer's perspective, as an organization is growing, from the startup phase through to maybe a little bit more of a mature organization, the phrase we talk a lot about internally is right people, right seats. And those are really tough conversations to have, and they require alignment at the leadership level with, one, are you really clear on your core values? And then two, do you know what good looks like in those core values, or what consistent demonstration looks like in those core values? Because you're going to have some peaks and valleys, right? We're talking about people. We work with people, so you're going to have good periods and maybe some not so good periods. But what you want to be able to do as a leadership team, and these are really tough conversations. I know we've had those internally as much as other organizations we've worked with have had to go through them, of just being transparent about where you were, where you are, and where you're going, and what the expectations are now of where you are and where you're going. And then working with the individuals on your team to determine what are their own personal goals. Somebody in sales with an organization, they may be perfectly content with their quality of life standards generating $250,000 a month in revenue. That may get them where they want to be from a personal standpoint. That might not be aligned with what the bar is now in your organization. And you're going to have that transparent conversation of, hey, when you joined the team, we had set the bar at 125,000. And then the team proved that we could get to 175. And then we hit 200. And now just the minimum is 250. And for you, as somebody who's been here for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever that looks like, we expect your skills, and we have seen your skills be demonstrated of hitting X a month. And those are tough conversations to have, but if you're really clear on where you are now and where you're going, and you have a conversation about what today's standards are and how they're shifting for tomorrow, having conversations around that to see if there's alignment anymore. And some people are going to self-select out, and that is part of the process, and it sucks anytime you lose people, but it's part of the game at the end of the day. And then organizationally, and I know this is something we talk about just ourselves with our own team, is okay, how do we make sure people we bring in are not only going to be good for today, but they're going to be excited and motivated about tomorrow and where we're headed tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think, internally we operate on the EOS system, entrepreneurial operating system, and that whole, right people, right seats, that never stops. I don't care if you're a team of 3, a team of 30, a team of 300. And it's the critical importance from an organization standpoint, having that transparent conversation. It's often, though, easier, it feels like, for a company, a manager, a leader, to have that conversation with an employee. But often it's really difficult as an employee to have that conversation with your boss, right? Like, how do you go to your boss and say, hey, look, I don't know if this gives me the opportunity to reach my potential anymore. I mean, have you had that conversation yourself? I know, as I look back at my career, before I left and started my own organization, I can remember distinctively having that conversation with my last boss around, I believe in what this company's doing, and I believe in an opportunity to grow here. I'm just concerned that the next 1, 2, 3 steps of growth aren't aligned with what I'm trying to achieve with my professional career. And as I look back, I'm sure, more than 10 years ago, I could have probably had this conversation a little bit differently. But for today, especially where it feels like so much discussion is over email, via text, it's so impersonal at times that oftentimes those really difficult and challenging conversations seem much bigger than just that transparency you talked about a second ago, right? Just having that dialogue. What would you recommend for somebody that's in that position today?
Yeah, so if you're an employee working for an organization and you feel like you have outgrown your role and you don't see a clear path for how you can move forward, number one, I would say, hey, you may not know what's happening behind the curtain. Whether it's a 10-person organization, and for sure, if it's a 500 plus organization, there's conversations that I guarantee you are happening with the leadership that you're not fully aware of, because some information is not intended to be broadcast, right? So the first step that I would recommend for somebody sitting in that employee seat questioning if they've outgrown the organization is because people get nervous, right? It's called courageous leadership or managing up, depending on the dynamics of the situation, but is to write down, and I'm over here with my invisible paper, write down what is it that you're looking for in the next step in your career, and be really clear about that. So first it's identifying, okay, here's where I want to go and what I'm hoping to achieve, and then have some conversations around that with your leaders. And they may be able to tell you that that opportunity is there, but it's 24 months away, and then you have a decision to make of, are you willing to wait, or are you willing to build it to get yourself there? And there's a lot of organizations, I know I've had the privilege of working for some, and we try to instill that within our own team now, of like an ownership mentality, in being intrapreneurial in an organization. And that's sort of building the plane while you're flying it, I guess, is an analogy, but building the process or the system that's going to enable you to get to that next step. But let's say you've done all that, you've had those conversations, the leadership is content at the size and scale of the organization, or you can look up. I had a really great conversation with an operational leader a couple weeks ago who looked up and said, okay, I know I have the capability of reaching the COO level, and I'm 1, maybe 2 steps away max of that, depending on the scale of the next position they accept. And when I look where I am, the person ahead of me is going to get that position because they've been groomed and grown, right, internally for that, and promoting from within is amazing within an organization. And it's going to be like 15, 20 years before I might have that opportunity. So they unfortunately have to make the decision to leave. And it's unfortunate for their current organization, but also can be seen as a positive because you build connections and relationships that you can take beyond the boundaries, right, of the organizations that you're in now. But if you've outgrown where you are, it's probably best to have that first conversation with your team and then to start the process. And I would encourage you to partner with, talent consultants like us or anyone else to help you navigate your market, like your industry, and find that next opportunity, and how to do that in a way that will keep that bridge built between you and your current organization and not burn a bridge with an organization when you leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you brought up a really good point. I mean, again, it's sitting down and getting really clear on your goals, right? And I think a lot of times too, depending on kind of what stage you are, you may be in your career, your goal can be making more money, which is totally okay. Like, money's a great tool. It affords a lot of things in our life that makes life fun. But it's making sure that you're putting value around those requests too, right? So you're sitting down with your boss and you're seeing through your goals. And if you want to say, hey, okay, I want to make $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 more a year, what value can you bring to the organization? What does that stair step look like? So, hey, I want to make this amount of money in the next 12 months. This is how I can help the company achieve a level of revenue that in turn will bring that value and my value up in the organization. Is that opportunity there, right? And if you have a strategy, if you have a plan, and you're part of an organization that sees value in that entrepreneurship approach, any single person is going to look at that and go, wow, okay, I need to take this conversation serious, right? And if that opportunity is not there, you would hope that they would let you know. But to your point, there is oftentimes conversations happening behind the scenes that in a big organization you don't know about. Now, you brought up a good point about having conversations with experts, right? And I think that's a really great segue into how we help some of our candidates just do that. Just because you're talking to us doesn't necessarily mean like you need or want a new job in the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. It may be, let's have a strategic conversation around that exact topic of how you can approach your manager, your leadership team about your vision for your career and your vision for the company, giving them the opportunity to assess, is that realistic? And you too, the opportunity to assess, is that realistic? It may or may not be, right? If it's not, well, you've got a team, whether it's us or anybody else that specializes in this type of work out there, that has your back too, right? Of like, hey, okay, we crafted this strategy together. This company said, hey, this opportunity is not there. What do I do next, right? So for like a candidate who's in that position where it's like, okay, I've had these conversations with my manager, I've had these conversations with executive leadership, I feel like every quarter, every review, every annual review for the last 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, nothing's changing. What should those individuals do today?
If you feel like you've done the homework, you've written down your goals, you know where you're trying to go, you have outcomes that you can see very clearly that you've contributed to the organization, then it's searching for that next opportunity, and would strongly recommend having a conversation with a team like us. I will say you mentioned a really good point, and I'm almost wondering if you like foreshadowing. I don't know if you saw me writing. I was like prepping my LinkedIn post, right? Because this topic came up in my brain this morning. But building a relationship with a talent consultant, we're also called like recruiters, right, is not done just so you can get a job tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We have so many candidates that we've worked with. It's 1 year, maybe even 2 years down the road before we ever go down the process of getting them interviews and getting them into positions, because careers take time. You have to work through cycles in business, right? Depending on your level in a role, you want to make sure you can show some results from your work. But it's having a conversation with an expert in your field and making sure that you do it with somebody who you feel is aligned in values, genuine in their interactions, because usually you can smell it when they're not, and does what they say they're going to do. So if they tell you they're going to follow up with you by a certain day, did they follow up with you on that day? Even if it was a, hey man, no updates, but I haven't forgotten about you. In this day and age with ghosting culture, a little bit goes a long way. And that's what I would encourage is when you know that you're not in the organization that's the right fit anymore, it's as soon as you realize that, having conversations. But I would sort of challenge anyone listening to this that building relationships with organizations like ours and people like ours is about the long game as much as it's about the short game.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up the second episode of the Runway to Success. We're looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, take care.